We are ready.
Okay, I see it's time, so welcome everyone to our June 2nd work session for Cottonwood Heights City Council. And I will begin our meeting with a review of the business meeting agenda. So in the business meeting, we have our Pledge of Allegiance and a public hearing. Our first item on the agenda is a property tax impact schedule, which will be offered by our budget officer, Scott Jurgis. And then we have our public hearing on the tentative budget for the city's 2026-27 fiscal year. And so then in our citizen comments, they pertain just to that hearing at the beginning. And then after, I'm seeing Shane listen. So Shane will correct me, but after we have heard all those comments, then we will hear any other public comments. Is that a separate item?
Yeah, the public hearing would be a separate item, and so you would open the public hearing, and then what we're needing to do is to formally close the public hearing after all of the public comments have occurred on the budget. And then once that happens, well, then you would move on to the next agenda item of just regular citizen comments. But we do need to close the public hearing and not keep it open until the next meeting because that's how we drafted the legislation, and we have to do some other things if we're going to keep it open. I know that there's a desire to have the public be able to speak about the budget, but I just remind that this is the tentative budget, and there will be a separate hearing in August about the proposed tax increase. And so that will be a separate public hearing that we'll have at that time. In my experience, we had a little correspondence about this today. In my experience, we rarely get any comments about the budget, the tentative budget at this type of hearing. So anyway, just hoping that we can proceed in that way. If not, I'm going to have to change the.
That's fine. So again, just to be clear, we will have the public hearing on the tentative budget for the city's 26-27 fiscal year. And then we will close that.
Formally close that public hearing, and then you'll move on to just the regular public section of the meeting.
Does it require a vote to close the public hearing?
Let's do that this time.
Motion.
Let's have a motion and second vote to close the public hearing.
Thank you. Then again, we will have regular citizen comments, and we have just one action item, which is consideration of resolution 2026-35, emphasizing severe drought conditions and providing enhanced water conservation measures for city residents and businesses. So do we want to review that at all in this meeting?
Question, was this something that was done in coordination with Salt Lake Public Utilities, or was this of our own?
This was something I just, when we started, had the discussions, and I got a letter from obviously Salt Lake City Public Utilities when they went into their tier 2, and they were outlining some of the plans of what tier 2 means. It just kind of made me think as we started thinking about the water pad and things of that nature. Although we don't have any teeth as far as enforcement, we don't have things of that nature. In my mind, I just thought it would be advantageous to remind our residents and also to show support for conservation as a city. It's more of a, we know there's an issue, and we encourage all of our residents to follow the rules that are out there, because we just don't have anything in our ordinance that allows us to enforce water restrictions at this time.
It would be possible for the council in the future, if things get much worse, to consider enacting an ordinance prohibiting outside watering, say between certain hours of the day. That's about the only thing that we can monitor, because you can see whether that's happening or not. We don't have the ability to determine water usage and things like that, because we're not a water provider. So the things that we can do are a little bit limited. Outside watering during prohibited times would be something we might be able to look at doing, but that would be a separate ordinance later on if the council wants to do that.
I just think I'm just going to note that under the now therefore it be resolved by the Cottonwood Heights City Council so that we're all aware. It says standard watering schedule, residents served by either of our providers are strongly encouraged to limit outdoor lawn irrigation to a maximum of twice per week.
They
And-
announced that publicly this week as well.
Mhm. And that on private systems are encouraged to strictly follow specific guidance provided by their system managers. And three, smart technology and weather awareness. City urges use of smart irrigation controllers that adjust based on local weather data and deep watering of trees, and that the city promotes transitioning to xeriscaping and drought tolerant plants. I just have to say, on the street near my home, one of the sidewalk areas, the what do we call that? The park strip has been turned into drought resistant plants, and they are beautiful flowers, just beautiful. It's just so nice when people do it the right way. It's less water and more beauty.
It was way more expensive than I thought it would be, but it is nice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but it
You
is.
put it on drip,
nice scene.
then it reduces the weeds. I do need to make everyone aware, I am on private water. And we are encouraged to water in the afternoon because of the pressure of the system. And so if we were to make an ordinance, we'd need to be aware that that would not apply to the private systems.
Yeah,
So,
because and that's right in our resolution that we acknowledge that private systems are following the directions from their providers. So thank you for raising that. Then the final note item there is our consent calendar and approving the minutes for the May 5th meeting, which I was confused about earlier today or last night, and then adjourning that meeting. Then if we go back to this meeting right now, we will, on our agenda, we have reports from Salt Lake County, and they will not be here. Their meeting just ended, so they're on the way.
Yeah.
But they will not be here right first. So I think it would be appropriate, if it's okay, to move on to staff reports and go to our interim budget presentation from our finance director, Scott Jurgis, and then we'll make them sections and go back to them when they're here.
All right, I wanted to share updates that I got last time we reviewed kind of a framework outline of some budget policies that were really a meld of what we have had, what Holiday has had, as well as, you know, augmenting some areas that needed some augmentation. I was able to take comments that I received back on that and then kind of reformat it into where it sits right now. There's still some areas in here that I have highlighted yellow that we need to make some, you know, ultimate decisions on at some point in time to decide, you know, are these the percentages that we want to have? Again, the target area for the general fund balance that I put in there, and this came from me only, is 15 to 25%, having the fund balance be in that range. There on our other funds, Councilmember Highland sent.
it was passed it, the stormwater, instead of 500,000 a percent.
Yes, and I put 500,000 or 25% of revenues, whichever is greater. Our actual revenues are about 1.8 to 1.9 million right now. We've been maintaining 500,000, so if you're okay with that slight edit to your suggestion, we're about at that point right now anyhow, with the revenues that are in there. And then as the revenues in that fund surpass, you know, 2 million, it would go up from there. Thank you. At that point in time. If you'd be okay with that edit on there. Let's see, and then there was another one down below on compensation. This was pulled out of the Holiday policies where if a salary range was more than 5% below the market range, that the grade for that position would be adjusted upward. And again, we haven't had any discussion on that, so I wanted to make sure that we had discussion on that prior to, just adopting that. But it's probably not a bad place to be, in terms of, looking at that. I think those are the main, one more, debt service policies. Holiday had an amount in theirs, right now I can't remember the amount that they had in theirs of debt service would be limited to not more than X% of the general fund expenditures. We're sitting at about roughly $4 million of debt service costs. And ours is a transfer over to the debt service fund and then the actual expenses out of there. But our total revenues are about 30 million, give or take. And so we're sitting a little more than 10% right now. So I don't know what would be, best to have in there looking into the future. There are two things coming up. One is, one general thing is, do we want general obligation bond debt to be included in this number? And I would probably suggest that we don't, because that goes out for a separate vote by the people. And so if there were desires to have additional general obligation bond debt, then that could impact that. And we're also authorized for $10 million of additional general obligation bond debt on the town center area. So that is a possibility there that would potentially add maybe another 700,000 or 800,000, somewhere in that range of debt on that. And then we've also got to think about our heavy duty plow equipment is we're making our last payment on that in September. And then thereafter, we will be starting to consider replacement for that equipment. And the costs are extravagantly higher than what they have been in the past, probably almost 3 times what we paid for that equipment 10 years ago. So we need to consider some of those things as we're setting this limit. But I would suggest maybe we, omit general obligation bond. And if we did that, that's about 1.3 million out of our total, 3.9 million that we transfer over right now. But I think we need a little more analysis on that before we come up with a hard number that we want to put in there. Because we don't want to hamper what we need to do, with just a number that we happen to put in there without a lot of thought.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think it's really important to point out that this is not a percent of the general fund. It's actually just restricted to the expenditures because there are transfers that are part of the general fund revenue.
Yeah.
Holidays is at 15%, and then they specifically say that excludes general obligation bonds because the general obligation bonds have their own revenue source. So I don't know the percentage, but I assume that if we put a percentage in there, that the long-term budget committee would probably revisit it and maybe revise it.
Yeah.
And I don't know the reason for holidays 15%, but I'm inclined to follow their reasoning because I think it was vetted, and unless somebody has a different approach to that.
Are you wanting more time, Scott, to think about the percentage?
I'm okay to put 15% in there, as a placeholder, and then maybe I can do just a little bit more review into that in the next couple of weeks before we adopt the budget. If I have a justifiable, edit to that, I can bring it to your attention at that point in time. But I think 15 is a good placeholder, excluding that geo bond debt, because that would put us, we'd be in the 1.7-ish, or sorry, $2.7 million range, somewhere in that range now, which includes about $300,000 of debt service payments on plows. If that amount was to double or a little more, it would put us somewhere over maybe $2 to $2.5 million, $3 to $3.5 million of net debt service payments. So I mean, in looking at it from just a high level without, doing a lot of forward calculations and other things, I think 15% would probably cover and not hamper us with what we're trying to do operationally. So.
Well, a thought that I have on this subject is that one of the things I'm looking for with these financial guardrails related to budget is more prudence in acquisition. We certainly have the GEO bond, we have the $30 million. However, based on uncalculated or unforeseen instances, the $1.1 million that we are currently paying each year on that debt without being able to advance the project on the timeline that is what the public expected. I want these guardrails to help not only our council, but going forward into the future to help councils, slow down on acquisition and creating more debt and more operations and maintenance for our city until we can show that we are fiscally in a place that, so I guess, my point is that, yes, I understand we're not including the GEO bond, but it is part of an encumbrance along with other bonding that we've done for the acquisition and building of, the city hall, which we're still playing on, of course, the public works complex. And now we're looking at a shooting range. So I would like guardrails to really spark the council to consider getting the city again more obligated for future
And
expenditures.
one of the areas here that's up on the screen now is capital asset management. And if you look through here, have a capital asset plan, but also, discuss future maintenance needs. Make sure that we're thinking about, replacement and other things along those lines. The good thing about the range is there's no capital upfront cost to us, there's no debt service, to us on that. There might be some maintenance aspects in terms of expense on that, in terms of, power bill, gas bill, other things like that. And I know we're going to discuss more on that, but I think the good thing on that one is in terms of a true capital expense, there is not a true capital expense involved with that because of the grant that come in to, cover that particular asset that you brought up. So.
Great.
Can you go back up to when it was the debt?
Oh, the debt service?
Yeah, the percent. There was, when it said, this is the next bullet, outside professionals will be used when considering debt. Is that when considering bond debt, or I think it's a little unclear to me.
Combination, like we have a financial advisor that we have on tap, and our current financial advisor is Zion's Public Finance, that they advise us when it's wise to maybe refinance debt, when we're going to market, whether we should do a direct placement or whether we should go to a bid format and different things like that. And also we typically get bond counsel involved if it's a true bond. If we're just doing vehicles, and we'll likely have vehicles on for the next meeting in 2 weeks, we utilize our financial advisor to advise us on what is a good rate, what is good terms, and make sure that those terms match with what we want to do as we go through that process. And so it could be a number of different individuals, and it could be even others that have expertise in certain areas. Like if we were selecting new plows, it might be somebody who works for an equipment operations outfit that knows and understands the latest, greatest, equipment deal with that. But it's just so that we are not relying only on our experience, because we, oftentimes we have limited experience in certain areas, and it's good to contact somebody who maybe has a little bit more broad.
So Suzanne, I was just reading KSL and it says Salt Lake County is going to buy Cottonwood Heights plows.
Oh,
So is that right? Just kidding, just kidding. Welcome. Welcome to the meeting.
Okay.
I don't include any consultants or anything else that we would have the need for.
Yeah, because at times we do, like sometimes we'll get an appraisal, that it would be, an appraisal would be included in it. Especially if it's a land purchase, oftentimes that is included. It would include, finance advice to us if need be. It would include legal advice, because sometimes, especially on bonds, you have to have, bond counsel that gets involved with, the different dynamics of everything that needs to be taken care of. So it's just an attempt to try and cover that whole plethora of individuals that we might need to engage with as we go through that process of acquiring debt.
I think that justifies that 15% because we don't want to be. Behind.
Yeah, I would say I don't want to exceed 15%, but to Councilmember Burrell's point, what we're trying to do is to exercise limits, but still allow flexibility for future councils who might face things that we can't even think might come down the line. But yeah, we definitely have ignored the true cost of maintenance over time, and there are policies in here that say we can't do that again. In addition to this. So I'm comfortable, what I'm saying is I'm comfortable with 15% and allowing the long-term budget committee to review it and make their recommendations.
Yeah, and one other thing we might want to do here is our actual expenditures are about 24 million. The remaining portion is transfers out, which to me is just another form of expenditure. So we might want to just edit this to say expenditures and transfers out. And that way we're kind of encompassing everything that depletes the general fund in some way or shape or form.
I would exclude transfers out.
You would, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that could be any number of things. And what we really want to do is focus on the percent of the expenses. How much are we have all these expenses in a big pot. How much, what little portion of that goes to debt? And we want to have a lid on that
Yeah.
of some sort.
Yeah, and just a note, $3.5 million is a transfer out of the general fund to the debt service fund to actually make those expenses in that different fund. That's why I brought that up, because that's being ignored in the general fund as a total, unless we take in aggregate all, but then you get capital expenses and they just sway so much from year over year that I would not include capital expenses. I'd focus more on your transfers than on your capital expenses.
Well, I will rely on you to put that in words.
Yeah, and I'll have a discussion with Jared on it, and we'll see if we can't come to something that makes some sense, and
Okay.
maybe we even flip back over and we look at the revenue aspect of it and base it on the revenues. The revenues are much more steady. Where sometimes you can have.
But aren't some of those revenues also constrained to like capital improvements? So
There are,
that would
yeah,
be a variable that you
Yeah.
might not want to include.
but you're right. So let me give it some thought.
Okay.
Chat with Jared on it, because I think there's a lot of ways that you could go. I don't think it'll make huge differences one way or another once we settle down on some things. And maybe we ignore certain aspects of transfers, right? But I'll take a look and see if we can't come to some normality in language, and then have Jared circulate that out and or talk to you in the meantime.
Point is, you don't want debt to become overwhelming. So whatever that is and how you want to describe it would be much appreciated.
Good. Anything else on that interim budget report?
Yeah, I mean, there's the full budget, and so if there's any questions that anyone has on something, I can bring that up, and I will circulate this out to everybody at the end of the meeting so that everybody has the latest draft of this, so that you can preview through it and see if there's additional adjustments that we need to make.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Okay, we'll go back. Now we see that Salt Lake County is here. So Salt Lake County will have a presentation on the county budget, services, and key priorities. And we welcome Kara Trevino, and we welcome Amy Winder Newton and Suzanne Harrison and Dia Theodore. All these
Thank
council
you.
members.
Do you want us to sit or
Sure.
stand or what's?
Yeah.
Come sit.
Well,
Yeah.
just take a chair. Do you want to sit there? You can. So here, thanks for having us, you guys. Kara Trevino is our Legislative Affairs Director, and so we're grateful for her for setting this meeting up. I'm Amy Winder Newton. I'm the chair of the council. Introduce yourself.
I'm fixing my seat. I'm Suzanne Harrison. I'm one of the at-large members of the Salt Lake County Council.
I'm Dee Theodore. I represent District 6, which is part of Cottonwood Heights. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you for letting us come. We did this presentation to some legislators about a year ago. And what we found was there were things that they didn't know about Salt Lake County. And so we thought, you know, we love coming and thanking you for your service and getting to hear what's going on in your city. But we also recognize there's a lot of things going on at Salt Lake County that we would love to tell you about. And so if you don't mind, I would love to just start through this little presentation to help educate a little bit more on Salt Lake County, things that we have going on. So I don't know if who's clicking the slides.
Yeah.
Your clicker? Okay, I'll just do that when we need to click. So thank you. It's interesting as we have started to become wall-to-wall cities. You can go ahead and click. We've had people say, oh, well, there's no more unincorporated land left. So I guess we don't need the county. And it's because they don't realize what the county does in our regional role. So for so long, we had both the regional and the municipal role for a lot of areas of the county before incorporations and annexations happened. And we always had to have two separate budgets by state statute. And so now we're able to focus on just the regional piece. You can see on these slides behind me, when different cities incorporated. And you can see in the 90s, we had a whole bunch of cities incorporate. Including Cottonwood Heights. I was involved in the Taylorsville incorporation, so we were cheering you guys on as you were doing that. And then in the early 2000s, we had our townships that started to become cities. And then a bill passed in 2024 that basically said all of the rest of the little tiny parcels, a lot in Sandy of the little Swiss cheese parcels, have to annex or incorporate by July of 2027. And so we truly will have wall-to-wall cities. The canyons, a lot of the canyons are still unincorporated. And we think that that's great. That's used by a lot of our county residents. But things are moving forward to being able to focus just on a regional role. So will the need for the county still exist? Yes, of course it does. In state statute, it lays out what our function is and what we need to do as a county. We can go ahead and move forward. Yeah. So Suzanne's going to talk a little bit about some of the services that the county provides.
First and foremost, and this is also a statutory obligation of ours, is public safety. We are 3/4 of our general fund goes to public safety. We fund our jail, we operate the jail, our district attorney's office, our indigent defense, our criminal justice services. And that is a huge proportion of our general fund. And it's also one of our most important mandates. And I think I speak in a bipartisan manner that we all deeply care about making sure we're fulfilling our obligations for public safety and criminal justice. Number 2 is elections. We have our county clerk, Lanny Chapman, and she has an obligation to do obligations and also, elections. And also she contracts with every city in the county as well to run those city elections as well. And she also does things like marriages, passports, and but her main duty is elections. And I really think she has set the bar very high for our state on free and fair elections. We are responsible for the health department. I serve as the council representative on the health department. They're the ones that go out and make sure that our restaurants are safe. And if there's an outbreak of Legionnaire's disease in one of our senior assisted livings, that those folks are taken care of, that those issues are addressed so that the public stays safe. We would have vaccination clinics, and they do a lot of outreach in the community to make sure people are aware of those public health resources and how to stay safe. Adult and aging services. This is another one that part of it is federally mandated. The nutrition portion of adult and aging services are Meals on Wheels. We are mandated by federal statute to provide those nutrition services. We deliver over 2,000 meals a day in the county, and many of those folks are otherwise at severe risk for food insecurity. We also provide meals in our senior centers and activities in our senior centers. And in this era of growing awareness of the harms of isolation, those senior centers are really important in our community to helping folks stay connected, stay healthy, and stay active, both mentally and physically. Behavioral health services. A lot of states handle behavioral health at the state level. Our state is one that obligation is at the county level. So we are the behavioral health authority for the entire county. And what that tends to address and mean is folks that are very, very low income on Medicaid or disability. We provide those behavioral health services for those that are in those programs. And it is a significant portion of funding. As a lot of that comes from the federal government. Some of it is also from the state through programs like Medicaid and so forth. We've worked really hard in the past couple of years to increase our services in behavioral health space. This year alone, we are opening 3 group homes for folks with severe mental illness to be able to be housed after they're stabilized so that they can remain housed and get those mental health treatments that they desperately need to stay stable. And we're really proud of that work that our behavioral health team is doing. We're also in the culture and arts business. A lot of people don't know that we, run the Mountain America Expo Center, the Salt Palace. Those are county assets, and those funds we think are really important because folks come here, go to conventions, or they, come and ski in our, world-class ski resorts, enjoy the tourism amenities that we have here. And then we benefit from that tax revenue without having the burden, the obligation to educate their kids. The tourism dollars offset the average household income or the average household tax obligation by about $1,900 per household. So this is a really important source of revenue and helps keep taxes as low as possible in our community. It also funds our Parks and Rec department, which is really important. I think a lot of people think that those things are coming from property taxes, but it's actually coming from tourism dollars in our convention tourism. And the culture and the arts is also funded by those tourism dollars. That's how we are building with the generous donation of the Miller family, a new art center on the west side of the valley. And these really amazing opportunities that our community appreciates are with tourism dollars. Regional parks and recreation, again, that is one of the things that's funded by our tourism dollars. We have regional parks, we have rec centers throughout the county. And, when certain areas have incorporated the smaller parks, we tended to just have the cities take over. But the regional parks, those big, large amenities, we think are important to have as a regional amenity for anyone in the county to be able to enjoy. We also provide that free My County Rec Pass for any kid under the age of 18 to have access to any county rec center, ice sheet, pool, or climbing wall, which has been a great thing for our residents to be able to have access to low cost fun and hopefully get more of those kids off their phones, connecting in person to address some of the isolation and challenges that screens are bringing in our community too. We have library services throughout the county. We have a nationally recognized award-winning library system. It is actually a separate line item on property taxes because back when this was all started, there were 2 cities that had their own library system. And so to keep it fair and recognize that Salt Lake and Murray have their own library systems, it's a separate line item on property taxes. So every single aspect of our libraries is paid for from property taxes, and it's separate from our general fund. So we are really proud of our library services. The folks, we have really good survey results, and people really appreciate being able to have access to those amenities. It's more than just books. They have all sorts of things they're doing in the community, and it really tailored to different communities, what they're interested in. And then finally, we're responsible for property tax administration, and this may make us not the most popular people in the county, but in addition to collecting taxes for Salt Lake County services, we collect taxes for all of the different entities, the school boards, the cities, and so forth, and then distribute them back to those entities. But it does sometimes cause some confusion in that people think that we're the ones increasing their taxes all the time because we're the actual collectors. So a lot of that is also passed through to entities like UTA. So we have a lot of things that we're doing in a regional nature, and we love to get to be here and partner with you guys, and I'm gonna turn it back over to Amy.
Thank you. So when people have asked, oh, what are things that the cities could be doing that the counties have? Our answer to that is we're trying to limit our regional role to what should be regional. And that's why, to Suzanne's point, the smaller parks we've given to communities as they've incorporated or whatnot. Go ahead. These are our elected officials in Salt Lake County. We have a mayor council form of government. And so our mayor is the executive and runs the day-to-day of the county, Mayor Wilson. And then we have 9 council members. We are the legislative body who passes budgets and sets policy. The top line with those 3, those are our at-large council members. They have to run in a district larger than a congressional district, which is countywide. And so because of that, they earn a 6-year term instead of 4 like the rest of us. And then the other 6 of us are districted council members. And so we all have 4-year terms. Go ahead. We also have our independent elected officials. They also rotate and run every 4 years. And you can see the different jobs that they have. They are also running countywide. And so state law basically dictates that all the counties have these different roles covered. The exception is the Justice Court. And once we are out of the business of having municipal services, we have decided to dissolve our Justice Court. And so that will dissolve next year. So anyway, go ahead. So this is my favorite subject, which is super nerdy, but I love talking about our budget because I feel like it's the most misunderstood piece of Salt Lake County. A lot of people, when they go to run for a county office, they love to say, oh, look at how the county's budget has increased so much from, this year to this year. Well, in reality, a few years ago, the state auditor said, you guys need to show on your balance sheet all of the pass-through taxes, even though you don't get a single say in them, or they don't go to you. If they go to UTA or to the cities or whatever, you have to show them on your balance sheet. So if you go to the next one, you can see $500 million is like the 5th and the 4th quarter funds and the different funding sources that you guys get for like transportation and other things, as well as the funds that go to UTA. Those have to show up on our balance sheet. So $500 million we don't get to touch, but it still has to pass through and we have to show that as a budget. And go ahead. I want to talk a little bit about our budget because I think some people don't understand this. Suzanne had talked about we have a revenue source of tourism taxes, and that's like our TRT and the TRCC, the track fund. That's restaurants, hotels, and car rental taxes. And those can only be used for certain things that are tourism related. And so we try to put as much as we can there. So that's where you get the culture and arts, the parks and rec, those are all funded with the tourism taxes, the convention centers and everything. The general fund is the most fungible fund, and we want to protect it because so much of it is public safety related and we need to keep it that way. So anytime we're raising property taxes, it's in the general fund and it's not affecting it. That fund is not affected by whether we have an art center or a park or some of those types of things. So it funds, our general fund funds our core government services. We also have other special revenue. Like I mentioned, we have the track fund, behavioral health has its own fund. The libraries have to be separate. A lot of people will say, wow, that sure seems like a lot for property tax on libraries. And what they don't understand is that is all the libraries we have to pay for buildings, operations, and maintenance all on that one property tax line item in order to avoid double taxation because of the Murray and Salt Lake City library issue. So anyway, those funds all are discretionary for specific uses. Enterprise funds is another thing that we do. So for instance, our golf courses are self-sustaining. We're in the black. Anything that we get in revenue is what we use to upkeep the golf course. We don't use any general fund dollars for it. It's in its own enterprise fund. We do that also with the landfill. We co-own the landfill with Salt Lake City. And also our public works is a separate fund, enterprise fund. So we try to do that so that we're keeping that separate. And so we truly can make sure every dime of property taxes is going to core government services. As Suzanne mentioned, 74% of our general fund is public safety related. And here's a slide that kind of shows the breakdown. You can see the jail is that big portion, almost half of those funds go to the jail. But then also the DA's office, criminal justice services, indigent legal defense. We have a few other things that are funded there too. You guys already know this, so I probably don't need to give you much on this, but property taxes get to be frustrating because with truth in taxation, you don't get to capture inflation. You're taking the same you got the year before minus new growth, and you have to do truth in taxation in order to take more. We've been doing a tax increase about every 5 or 6 years to try to catch up on inflation. So 2019 was the one 2 times ago, and then last year we did one at 15%. The mayor had proposed 20%. We found cuts in the general fund, which are super hard to do because so much of it is public safety, to lower that to 15%. And so it had been a 6-year time span. If you add up what inflation would have been over those 6 years, we didn't even fully capture the inflationary growth. But we felt like it was okay to cut back a little bit and try to do more with less. So we try to help people understand how property taxes work. You can go to the next slide. The biggest misnomer is people think that as their property values go up, their taxes automatically go up. And we're trying so hard to educate people on that. And in fact, we've even thought maybe we should just start taking the inflationary amount each year as a property tax increase, since people think that that's what's happening anyway, rather than doing tax increases every 5 to 6 years. So we're still kind of debating whether that's a better method to doing, to keeping our general fund intact. So here's a property tax statement. You can see the 2 items that are Salt Lake County for everyone. The bottom one, the county assessment and collection levy, is to fund our collection of the property tax and what we give back. You also can see in there, it's not highlighted, but the library. So those are the 3 things that show up that are affecting your property taxes. And then this is the slide that says, when my property values go up, does my property tax go up? No, it does not. So the more we get the word out on that, help people understand how truth in taxation works, the better for all of us. Because I know you guys are in the same boat that we are with that.
It's a heavy lift.
It is. It's hard. Do you guys do increases every 5 to 6 years, or do you do small ones along the way, or what's?
We've done one.
We've done
Since the
one in
incorporation.
21 years.
Really?
So we're
Wow.
doing
It's like
so now we
14%.
So this year is your year. Do you guys need therapy? Because we're here for you. We can, you know.
Let me
It's one of the
think about it.
services you provide, I saw.
Yeah, we give therapy to other elected officials who have to raise taxes because we know how it feels. So anyway, call us anytime.
But we have had some feedback from residents that say, why such a gut punch?
Yes.
You do this more gradually so that we can assimilate into our budget the way you're assimilating into
Mhm.
yours, and it's a real debate. I saw that Murray, I think, did a big 45%, I think in 2019, and then since they've done like 12, 9, 6, 9, they're metering it out, and it's because truth to taxation is such a difficult process, it's meant to stymie us a little bit, so
It
you have to
is.
think twice.
Right.
But I really do put a lot of weight on that argument that if it was more gradual, I could also assimilate that into my household budget instead of these huge periodic increases.
West Valley has been doing that for years, where they take,
Mhm.
I don't know if it's 2.8 or 3%, and they basically capture the rate and do it that way.
It's like
So,
my rate.
and they say their people just kind of get used to, this is what it shows. But yeah, I mean, after this last year, and even like we had the threat of, we had people trying to do a referendum on our 15%. If that would have gone on the ballot, we are so worried about, you can go to the next slide. We're so worried about our AAA bond rating. Because we are one of only 42 counties in the entire nation that have a AAA bond rating. And what that does to bond rating agencies when they see that so easily something's on the ballot to, vote down a tax increase so that you can't pay your obligations, like that would hurt all of us on our bond ratings. So, we want to be responsive to the public, and we are trying to do better with educating people on how our budget works, though. We hear you, like it's hard. It is hard. It's a heavy lift. We do regular stress testing. When our budget comes forward, we have each department do a 3% stress test so that we have ideas on places that maybe we can cut back, and they're participating in that process. But we are really good at going through our budget with a fine tooth comb and looking at like, what is the role of the county? And as we've transitioned to this regional role, sometimes that you know, that's been a source of discussion and it's been a good thing, so. If you go to the next, Dee's gonna talk about our public safety and some of the things coming up.
Okay, so jail is a fun topic, I guess. So I don't know if you guys realize, but we do have two jails in Salt Lake County. The county runs Oxbow and then the main ADC, Adult Detention Center. And so that's the bigger one that's by the sheriff's office. Oxbow's the smaller one.
We also
The
call it the Metro Jail.
Metro Jail, which holds roughly 2,000, and then Oxbow's about 360 roughly. That one's severely outdated. We had plans to not invest into it, but we've had to put a little bit of money into it so we could open some more beds because we're at capacity. And so keeping beds open has been a priority because we're seeing some changes in enforcement, which are good changes. And we want to be able to accommodate and we want to keep our community safe. But I guess, let's see, yeah, 1/5 of the jail's beds are in Oxbow. So there's still a lot there. But again, there's some inefficiencies where we are going back and forth. Our employees are going back and forth with laundry. Was it
The kitchen's in one and the
issue.
laundry's in the
So-
other.
So there's that issue. So we're trying to get out of the Oxbow to the main and expand that. And you might remember that we did a jail bond a couple of years ago and that marginally failed. So we're coming back, and you can switch on to the slide there, like, but it does remain at capacity. So it's definitely something we have to address. It just hasn't been addressed in 20-something years. So we have pressure on us to do this. And so we are doing it. That jail bond did fail. Instead of going back out and doing that, which would be a geo bond, we're going to go a different way this time. And so we're going to do a lease revenue bond. And we did have our debt review committee assess it and give us a recommendation on it. And that is the recommendation. So we will be moving forward to expand beds in the ADC. But at the same time, we do have an issue that we're facing, which is mental health. And so that's another one, because we don't want to be the revolving door for mental health patients when obviously they need other treatment. And so the jail is just not where it's at for that. And so we are trying to address that as we move forward with the jail expansion and see where we end up. So there is that aspect as well, the component of it. So, but that's definitely a big deal to us. And we want to make sure that, you know, we're housing who we need to. We do have some beds that facilitate with ICE as well. There's like 10. So those will be there as well. And so it's definitely something that's been going on for some time, but we're addressing it right now. So
We know it's been a problem for your law enforcement and others in the community when they take people to jail and then they get out shortly thereafter, and there's just not that space to maybe have more of that accountability. So we're trying to balance the accountability with also helping people who we can stop that cycling.
yeah,
revolving.
and
So-
we're at capacity pretty much every day. We have a jail dashboard. You can check it out and see what it looks like, but it's very telling and we're always right there. So, yeah.
That is all we have. We're happy to answer questions, but just know how much we appreciate you guys. And, you know, again, we're here for you. Hopefully you've got our numbers, or if not, we can get them for you.
I have a comment. I would like to thank you. I know that you own still a number of roads around Southern County, one of which abuts my District 4 to the south. So we're flow out of Cottonwood Heights on Old Wasatch Boulevard. Once you've left SR 210, you own that patch of road. Again, from the southern edge Cottonwood Heights till you reach Murray's traffic light at the top of the hill, which is roughly 9,800 south. I don't know if you know what I'm talking. Do you know what I'm?
I didn't think we owned any more roads.
I believe that you do. It's kind of an odd thing and maybe it's uncommon. But when I looked into it, because I had constituents say, why did Sandy change the configuration where there's only one southbound lane? Now, I happen to think that's wonderful. It tends to go in traffic. Cars aren't racing like they do when you have two lanes. So then I looked into it and found that it's Salt Lake County. And I've actually been meaning to reach out and thank. So
Wow.
obviously it's caught you a little unaware, but you know, your effect on safety and the things that you do through your regional planning department, and Helen, I understand, has moved on, but it so permeates all of our experience, and with the Board of Health and some of the challenges again in my District 4 with the gravel pit and various things. Cities of our size really rely on you for a lot of these things, noise nuisances and, health related things. So it's not lost on me. I just want you to know I've come to really learn and appreciate, in my first term. So I appreciate what Salt Lake County does.
Thank you. And please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Like, one of the reasons we're here is this is a team sport serving our shared constituents. And we may not know all the various issues that you're dealing with, but we want to make sure that you feel that connection. We can reach out, you can reach out to us to make sure that those issues are addressed in a timely manner.
Well,
Thank you.
I used to see Dee Theodore all the time over at the Cottonwood Rec Center, right? We went for about a 2 or 3 year period of time where you were there with your
You
girls. and-
passed the baton off, right?
Yeah,
Honor.
my daughter works at Cottonwood Heights now,
Like
so,
her.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is so cool.
So great.
I can tell you multiple instances that I've heard of, and I'm sure the chief can speak to many, you already know this, but somebody who was arrested for domestic violence goes to jail. And I think the last time I heard with this instance, the next day the police was at their home again for domestic violence because they're just getting out. So that issue, obviously a lot of emotions around that. You got years worth of stories that you can tell on this, but super important to tackle. So thanks for your work on that. I mean, y'all do some really amazing things. And we get a call and know you from time to time on stuff. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you too. In the area of public safety, I get to attend the quarterly meetings with everyone, and it's really astonishing how many people come together to talk about how to solve the issues that are going on with the jail system and the incarceration rates and everything else within our county. And I think that that's just a wonderful thing to do. I don't know if they'll kick me out of that eventually, but it's fun to be able to get there and hear everybody. And I also just appreciate the opportunity to be able to reach out to each and every one of you on a personal level when there are issues to be able to discuss it. And that's critical for us as public representatives to be able to have a resource so that we can bring back that information to our residents and give them the facts and not just the hearsay, which is what gets us in trouble most of the time.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
One other thing, just to Matt's point, we're trying to raise awareness too in the community and with our local law enforcement throughout the county about the resource of the Crisis Care Center, which is right by the Metro Jail. It is a place that anyone who's experiencing a mental health crisis or law enforcement folks that are dealing with someone who's clearly experiencing a crisis can bring that person to get the care that they need in that mental health space. And the average drop-off time for law enforcement is 4 minutes to get your folks back out on the job. So it's an incredible resource. Anyone can go there who's experiencing a crisis, regardless of your ability to pay. And they're trying to raise awareness too with our local law enforcement that is a resource for you as well. So thank you so much for having us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for
See you
coming.
soon.
Hey, after that, we will go back to our agenda. We have our budget officer will present and make available to the public a property tax impact schedule as a separate document from the other budget documents. So we'll turn our time back to Finance Director Scott Jurgis.
Yep, and that's the same document that we've had since we adopted the tentative budget. And we have copies available that Tiffany had right here. So if anybody wants one, please let us know and we'll get you a copy of that. They're also available online. And they've been there this whole time. Now, one note, that document will change slightly because between now, this meeting and our next meeting in 2 weeks, we will get our final certified tax rate. So we'll be able to put the actual tax rates in that relate to the property tax increase that we're proposing, and be able to update the document accordingly to be able to reflect those updated rates and everything. And so that will be one change, but it shouldn't change. Oh, and we will also, well, this isn't a change to that, so I won't mention that. So, but we'll get our certified tax rate. That's the main thing that we'll get and be able to then have it reflect proper numbers in there rather than projected numbers.
Will that be before our next council meeting or?
Yes, it's anticipated between the 10th and the 13th, right in that window. So just barely before. So it may not go out in your original packet, But as soon as we get the final numbers in can, we will get them out to you. So.
Any other questions on this item? Okay. All right, then we're ready for the next item on our agenda, our public safety range discussion, and we'll turn the time over to Police Chief Robbie Russo.
Well, thank you, Mayor and Council. I have Assistant Chief McHugh next to me to help answer any questions. And Director Matt Ship will help me with engineering issues and utility things and questions that you have. So this is a presentation that Sister Gerber helped us present, but it's hard to do remotely, so we will be presenting it to you. It's an overview of the range, the training range, and we've come up with some project updates and
Sorry, I'm not here to help you.
is that a pilot error over here?
That was a pilot saying dirty words in the microphone. I apologize to the public if they heard it.
Then forgive the stuff, Mike.
My apologies, Mayor. We're up and running.
Okay, review, this is a strategic investment in officer readiness, regional preparedness and community safety. Our vision is that we partner with all the different agencies in the valley and in the Wasatch Front. As you know, we have signed letters of acknowledgement and appreciation from all the different police chiefs in the valley, highway patrol, some federal agencies, the Kangen School District and others. This provides a modern firearms range, not only for CHPD, but also these other entities, to include the guardians that are mandated by the legislature to be posted in the schools to protect the children. It provides not only a simulation for actual firearms training, it gives a simulator where you can fire actual rounds into a scenario that's produced. On the screen, we can produce scenarios. This is important because with instances such as that happened with ICE in Minnesota, we do not want the first time an officer encounters a car coming at him with someone trying to flee, that be his first experience and knowing what to do. We want to present those scenarios in a controlled environment so that we can predict how they'll react, and we can train them on how we think they should react, and give them other tools and options to avoid any sort of crises. We're seeking funding from the federal government in a grant. We received that funding, and we're mitigating the issues of security, aesthetics, lead and noise, and all those kind of things that we'll get into. Thanks. Next. And I think I handled most of this. Improves the officer's readiness. And here are some numbers that go with it. The range or the grant we received was 2.1 million. I have heard other numbers thrown out there of over 4 million, which is not true. That was, anytime you go into the marketplace, you're buying a building or a car or anything else, you get different estimates and you seek different models and different things that you want. But that higher number was from another range manufacturer in Utah, but that is a brick and mortar type facility, which costs a lot more, which wasn't in the grant. The grant specified that it had to be prepared and made and sat in place, and not something that is built. Some of the money that we'll save is we spend about $7,000 a year. We pay it to Murray and to other entities and to private ranges to get our officers trained. That's what we spend, and there are multiple other agencies in the valley that spend remarkably more because they're larger. And to that point, outside revenue is projected at $62,000 a year. Where that number comes from is we currently pay Murray about $500 a day to rent their range. Is that right?
$500 for half a day, 4 hours.
Yeah, so we know that they're raising their rates because that's a 30-year-old facility, and their ventilation system and other infrastructure has begun to fail. So they had to put a lot of money into it to repair it, and to cover those costs, they're increasing what they charge to outside agencies. I've talked to them, and they believe it's around $600 instead of the $500. So where does the 62,000 come from? That's a light number, because if you assume that we rent it out for 2 days a week, $1,200 a week over the course of a year. That's where the 6,200. I talked to Craig and Murray, and he tells me he has to turn people away because it is full every single day. So, I mean, it's just assuming 2 days a week, 62,000, it'll be remarkably more. I imagine we'll have the same problem because this is a far better facility than they have. They have a great facility. It's necessary. We just don't have enough of them to train and to service everybody, not in just in the Salt Lake Valley. I get calls from everywhere from Ogden to Provo wondering when we can be up and running because they have the same issues. Long-term maintenance, which is really the filtration system, is about 17.5 a year. The lead removal is a net zero issue because we have vendors who will come remove the lead. There's a value to that lead. They'll remove it and then they give you credits. For instance, Action Arms does Murray's, and they remove it, they remanufacture it into fishing lures or other lead or other items, or sell it, and they give you credit for like the paper targets and the things that you need. So it doesn't really cost them anything to remove the lead. So we're just following that model. Next slide. This is the sound testing. This comes from Milo, who's the manufacturer of the range, and they give different sound variables, everything from inside the range to standing directly outside the range, to distances including 100 feet away, and the decibel rate. The important thing is that inside the range, of course, we have a policy that that came from formulation of other ranges throughout the nation, and it's best practices. When you're inside the range, obviously, we're going to use hearing and eye protection to protect everyone outside the range. About 100 feet away, it's comparable to common urban background noise. I've taken members of the mayor and members of the council who have seen and heard the range. The ones that you saw were not insulated. The ones we are getting are insulated. So, found. Next one. Noise mitigation inside the range, and I went over a lot of this. The hearing and eye protection, the sound rapidly decreases the further away you get. The closest home is 100 and
About 140 feet away.
140 feet away. Sound mitigation exceeds many existing operational law enforcement ranges. Next slide.
Does that account for the 8-foot wall?
No, that's a good question, because in the model that we're presenting, there's gonna be an 8-foot wall surrounding our wall, surrounding it. And then we want to landscape it as well, which will also mitigate it. But those tests don't include the sound that will be reduced by the wall and the landscaping.
So we don't know what that sound reduction is. We just know it will reduce the sound.
Right. Okay, certified range masters. I get this question all the time because there's a misunderstanding that this will require an FTE, which is expensive. It does not require an FTE because every time we use a range and we go to Murray's or somebody uses it, they have range masters, which requires a certification. They're skilled in instructing and safety and dealing with ranges. So each agency brings their own range master. They are responsible for conducting the training within the facilities as we are in their facilities. These ranges have video monitoring. They'll be inspected before and after. As with many of our areas in the city, we have officers who have dual roles, and we have our own range masters who can go over every day and inspect it, open it, close it, check people in and out. It's just an extra duty to what they're already doing. It does not require an additional FTE, especially since it's on site and they already work here doing their regular duties, and they will fill that role. We will have strict outside agency agreements and liability waivers and insurance requirements that already in effect. This is proven effective for other agencies that already have them. This is not new to us. And again, we'll have routine inspections for the ventilations, the backstop lighting, and emergency systems. The system is so automated. If there's a failure, or weakness or detects something in the air system, for instance, it'll alert us on our phones and on our computers that there's a problem, so we can shut the range down. So it's automated. So in addition to the visual inspection, the range can do this by itself. And since we're talking about safety, Chris can jump in here too, but these are fully sealed containers. Even the ventilation system is all steel plated. They have never had a round escape. In fact, these are placed in metropolitan areas. One of them is in Bass Pro Shops. It's in a mall. It's in the middle of a mall. Another one is the middle of a police department with offices and cubicles surrounding it. But in this case, we are proposing the wall in addition to add an additional layer of security, but we don't believe that it's a risk, or we are compromising safety with rounds escaping. I have heard that, well, you can't control what people fire, and they could fire something, like a 308 rifle. Well, these ranges will stop a 50 caliber round. And again, they have never had a failure, ever.
And that's not something we would ever shoot in the range. The highest caliber rounds we shoot are .223 for our patrol rifles. Outside of that, other agencies do carry .308 sniper rifles, but on a 25-yard range, it's not even worth trying to shoot it in there, because it doesn't make any sense to shoot a long range rifle on a 25-yard pistol range. It just doesn't.
Would those restrictions be part of the outside agency agreements?
Yes. They train their range masters before they were able to use the range, the proper authorization, what they're allowed to shoot inside the range, the type of weapons, type of ammo. Even though it's rifle rated to a higher level, we don't want armor piercing rounds shot in there, because it won't go through, but it can damage things, which is also the inspection afterwards, because we don't want somebody to come in, damage our property, and then us be on the hook for having to replace or fix, or it just doesn't make any sense. It's the same at Murray. If we damaged any of their properties, we would fix their property as well.
Is that contractual? I mean, are there financial consequences?
Yes, ma'am. Like when we, with our contract with Murray, states that if we cause any damage, we're required to fix their damage. Like if somebody went in there and shot they actually removed them, but they used to have pillars that did their turning targets. And every now and then people would you're going to hit things, but if you're using regular training ammo, it wouldn't mess up their pillars. Guys had gone in there and used ammo they weren't supposed to, shoot up their pillar. And then I can't remember which agency it was, but they had to go in and replace the pillars.
So it would be up to one of your officers to do an inspection after each one of the times it's rented out.
We would go in and just lock it up, and while we're locking it up, do an inspection, make sure everything's in order. We also have cameras. It comes equipped with internal cameras, so we can actually monitor, go back and review and see what they were doing if we find damage that wasn't found when it was being checked in and out.
Okay, next slide. I'll refer to Mr. Shea. This is the site that we've settled on. We brought Milo in from Vegas, showed him several different areas. This is the one that they think best suits it. And it's what we like best because we can secure it. It's next to the police department. We can put the wall around it for safety and aesthetics. We can control the access and the safety with badges. And we have the classrooms that are adjacent to it and the restrooms and things that we need to conduct the safety. And Matt can tell you the specifics of it.
Just real quick, some of the goals on this, one, obviously to cite it. I mean, we just, for informational purposes, we've bounced all over the city trying to find locations that would best suit this for this size. Public Works, we've looked at the parking lot here to the west. We've looked at UDOT. We've talked to UDOT. We've talked to Rocky Mountain Power. We've visited with different districts. And the best location for accessibility, security was this spot we're talking about. This is west of the police station and that small detention pond over there. And the other goals we had was to minimize the impact to the stormwater system. There will be some changes that'll be need to be made to make this fit, but you can see you can see this is the facility in yellow that we're talking about, the safety range. These are the dimensions we were working with. We also have, in order to make this work the best we can, we would be utilizing some of the patio that you can see here. We've tried to maximize as much as we could the distance from the building. And we've also tried to maximize the distance from this facility to the closest residence, which is right up here. You can't see it, it's off screen, but it's about 150 feet away to 40 feet to the living structure itself and about 135 to the garage. That was important and we kept it away from there. Also looking at this is maximizing some space inside. The police have their K9 units and I'll let them talk a little bit more about that, but we were asked to see if we can keep this as open as much as we can for the K9 training in this area. That walls it off. The green you see is the fence that would be going in, and the access to this facility is right down in here through that gate that goes into the police portico. So as people come in to use the facility and rent it out, they would go through the police station, do the check-in, and then come out through this gate and access it into here. So overall, we felt like this was the best location with the least amount of impact, and we've tried also citing this. Chief has talked a little bit about it. We've kept a pretty large, if you will, park strip around this facility. So if there's something we want to do as far as plantings, we can. We've also have a large space out here, which is deeper than the one that's existing, that will allow us the opportunity to come in and landscape that with trees, adding an aesthetic as well as another sound barrier that can go along this portion right up here. So that's, we have some efficiencies we can improve by doing this. We can make some changes, fairly minimal changes. When we first looked at this, the number was astronomical, I guess you could say, because of the need. We were thinking we'd have to move the whole storm drain system around, but we're able to utilize what's out there, make some minimal changes. And this is this site location that's being proposed right now.
I understand, let me help me understand.
Go ahead.
There is no access through that gate. I'm sorry, through the fence.
No.
The exterior fence. You have to come into the building, go through PD,
Yeah.
and then you access this.
Yes.
We control access and who goes in. We know
Yeah.
to check in with us. We make sure that
You have cameras, you have all the security to.
it's just the best practice.
Okay.
Right? And what Matt has alluded to on the K9 training, our K9 guys that go out there and train now, a lot of what they do has to be off leash. And the public comes through there too, and they also walk their dogs. As you can guess, sometimes there are problems with a little dog walking through there and the big dog's thinking that would be a fun toy. And we haven't had any real issues, or we don't want any real issues. What this does is it creates a wall, and this was an unintended good consequence, and what does create a training area for the canines as well, because it creates a grass area that they can secure, still train their dogs, and still be adjacent to the firearms range as well. So it creates added benefit for the canine units to use that area. And also, this is not on a cement pad. This is on,
Piling foundations.
and then they're set actually on top of it. So there isn't a big concrete pour or anything like that there. So you can still use the drainage system because it goes underneath. Although I don't even think we're using the drainage system.
We're
now.
rerouting it to this storm scepter up here.
Okay. Next slide.
Yeah, we've kind of brushed through it. I mean, talked about it. Written on here is 100 feet from the nearest residence. That was when we had the building sitting further to the north. Like I said, we've tried to pull it back and maximize the space and minimize the impacts to the existing facilities. Reduce, access, construction, all of those things. And then we talked about the security being next to City Hall and into operations. Well, Robbie can address, Chief can address that. But overall, we feel like this is a pretty decent site for the goals, if you will, of bringing it in a secure location and a easier access for location.
And I'll address the end of life issue with the facility. I've talked to Milo about that, and they actually haven't really encountered that except for in the cases with the military where they put them into actual training or war zones, and then they have to recover them. There, they will go recover them because they're a great value. They are happy to do it. It actually brings revenue in, but the federal government simply just turns it over to them and they can recover them because they don't want to leave them there. But you can refurbish them, but the paint and everything on these are designed to last for
I think it was 40 years.
40 years is a long time. I'm not sure another 40 years this building isn't going to need a lot of work, but yeah, our experience and their experience with them is people can repair them, rehab them, but most of the time they don't need a lot, and if they do, they're happy to come in and buy them because they have a lot of value to recover those things and sell them to someone else. So next.
I'll hit this. We were asked to look, I was asked to look at some different options. The fence, we're proposing for this is a panel, precast panel fence, about 3 inches thick. As far as the concrete is concerned, it's 8 feet in height is the proposed. It goes anywhere from 41,000 to 57,000, depending on the height. We think the 8 foot is appropriate in this location. Once again, for security and, sound and things of that nature. The fence that we would be looking at, is the same fence that surrounds now City Hall parking lot, the same color, same style. There are other options. We can do different face types like the split face, which you can see at the bottom. And that was thought about to try to match City Hall itself. The problem with that is the bricks and it's not a uniform look. Some bricks are long, some of the bricks are longer, some are shorter, so it's kind of I don't know. I wasn't here, so it's a different look. So to make that, if we did a split face, it would have to be uniform. We felt like it would be appropriate to match what's out there right now as far as the fence material and look. And then again, we've talked about the increased access,
So here are the financial estimates. On top, we'll start with the range itself. Our costing is 2.16 million. That's 60,000 more than the grant allows. But those are a couple add-ons, and keeping when we started this process a couple years ago. And so there was some increase from what we were seeking in the grant to where we got. And there's some add-ons that we liked. For instance, there's a vacuum that you use to vacuum any lead particles. You want to make sure that's a special vacuum that can't, explode. And we just don't want to use a regular Walmart sort of model, and that's expensive. So that's the number. The stormwater improvements are about 50 grand, as Matt indicated, and can be absorbed into the current budget. The perimeter wall is 57K. The annual maintenance, that's a 17,000. It's actually, I think, 17.5. That's what we had on the other slide. The insurance is 3,500 annually. We met Barbara and the Utah Local Government Trust to talk about liability and insurance. They weren't overly concerned. It was just another outbuilding for them. So our cost on that is $3,500 annually.
And that's for covering $2.5 million. So that'll cover the cost of the pylons and all of that. So they bumped it up. So it's actually, we have additional coverage, so the actual cost.
So 3,500. So the total is 2.288 million. Revenue. Grant revenue is 2.1 million. Stormwater funds is 50. What we are looking to do is use the interagency fees for the first year. We'd like permission to do that again. I think that projection is really light, so we won't have to use all of them, but assume it's 62,000. The range rental That's what we pay to other agencies, so we'll save 7,000 there. We have private donations and we're at 40,000 now. Expect that to increase. And then we sold the surplus vehicle and put that in for 35,000, which takes us up to 2.294 million, which is more than what we project the cost as being. Okay, next slide. So the next step is we need to settle on a place because we were looking at several different areas. This is where we think the best viable option are. We couldn't speak with all the neighbors because we didn't know which neighbors to talk to. We didn't know where we were going to be. So this is where we're settling in, given this area of construction and using a 250-foot radius, which is pretty standard for what we do on construction areas and different notifications. We would certainly reach out to the neighbors in this area, which is a good practice. It's something we want to do anyway. We don't want them operating on bad information or hearing people frightening them and saying that the police are going to be shooting guns and scaring them, or the noise, or saying that they're going to be subject to poisons in the lead. And so we'll contact them, give them the actual information, let them talk to us. Welcome to show them, talk to the Milo people, try to alleviate any concerns that they have. So that's one next step. And the next ones that we're looking at is we're looking for support from the council so that we can to support this area and support the plan moving forward. So we can develop a site plan, again, work with the neighbors, talk to Milo, let them know that this is where we're moving so they can begin their interaction with Mr. Ship and his team on what the actual construction looks like and deployment. And so I can report back to DOJ. That is what we're looking to do. What we're looking for is approval of the area, approval of the continued development and placement of the public safety training range at the preferred area, and authorize the staff to finalize engineering, utility coordination, and funding acceptance, which is something that you all will need to vote on and to accept the funding. And the only thing that I have not covered that you might want to know is what happens to the additional revenue that we take in from other agencies. Murray has done it, and that is a final question. Is up to you, and Mr. Churgus is the wizard of that. Because I don't know if you put it into enterprise fund or you roll it over, but it'll produce more than it costs us significantly. So imagine, Murray puts that in a fund so that they can repair their facility. Some of it may have got diverted into other areas as over the last 30 years, as typical in government. But anyway, that's a question that you can work on and give us direction on that. With that, are there any questions?
Yeah, I want to start out with two stories first, to kind of bring us into the reason why we have to have a facility like this. I know a lot of people here haven't had the same life experiences that I've had, so I ask folks to have an open mind and understand where I'm coming from. At the age of 16, I was driving from my high school weightlifting practice, and I was driving the opposite direction of a patrol car, and I was bused actually and part of a desegregation program in our city. So I was driving through the white area of our city to get back home. I saw the police car turn around, and I was taught at a very young age, because of our mistrust in our community of law enforcement, do not pull over in this area. Do not pull over until you get in front of our home. The officers actually turned on lights and chased me to my home. I stopped in front of my home. They pulled me out of the car with gunpoint. And there I'm 16 years old with nothing but sweats on and just coming from football practice. And they said, "This is a stolen vehicle." It was my father's car. Fortunately for me, my neighbors were there. They came out and they stated, "This is his father's car. We know him. He lives right here in front of this house." Nothing was said. They put the guns back in their holsters, took off. Didn't say a word to anybody. Second one took place when I was 19 years old, my sophomore year, playing football here at the University of Utah. Pulled over at night. Luckily, we had a couple of young ladies with us that was looking for me, I guess. And
Hard for me to believe.
they they pulled us out of the vehicle again. There were 6 of us. Laid us out in one of the parks, just right below the university property. Threatened us with our weapons and did not, until they started frisking us, did not stop until they saw the University of Utah football logos on our shirts. We were porous. We had to wear our stuff around, fortunately for us. Systems like this are required to be able to help de-escalate situations so that all officers are trained in a proper manner of engagement. These types of things still happen to this day. And without proper training and understanding of how to de-escalate a system, de-escalate a situation, we are going to run into problems eventually. This is something that will impact not only this community, but communities across the Wasatch Front. And I work with communities all the time trying to figure out how to do these types of trainings. This is something that is going to be very unique and something that is going to be an asset to our communities. Again, not just our community, but many communities. This community asked for de-escalation training in 2020. Here is an opportunity. These are the types of things that we are charged with bringing to our community members when it is asked of us. And Matt has done a phenomenal job of helping bring this to us and laying it out and getting the people behind this. I talked to the other chiefs along the Wasatch Front, and they are excited about this. This is something that is just imperative that we have as a community, and it's going to elevate us. And it's going to elevate us to the point where we are going to be a leader in making sure people's civil rights, their human rights, and the rest of the rights that they expect when they are engaging in our community with our community members. Next, we also have an armed citizenry here in our state. We have to be conscious of the fact that there's a different level of engagement when you're engaging an armed citizenry. We have guardians going into our high schools along with our officers. We have people on the streets that have just decided they can open carry. We have all of these things happening where we need this type of training. So I am an advocate for this facility, and I hope that these points resonate with people to understand the importance of having people that are educated in a professional way to be able to police as professionals within our community.
So Sean, this last week, there was some chitter chatter in our community. And some of the moms were texting each other, and my wife was on a group text with a lot of the elementary school kids. And there was a murder suicide that people started to talk about that happened just this last week. And, my wife asks me, how do the officers know that they're not going into someone it's an active violent situation? And I said, I don't think they do know. And she said to me, well, I sure hope that when they go in those situations that they know what they're doing, right? Because in those instances, you might have a family member who found somebody. You don't know what situation you're going into. And I think that training is super critical. 6 years ago in this country, and I think it was a good thing that made us have a discussion as a community about, what does proper policing look like? And I think there were a lot of people in this community and around the country that asked, and not even asked, but demanded for better training, for de-escalation, for all of these things that through these actions, I would hope that those people from our community would see that this is delivering on that ask, to try to make sure that our officers are properly trained on both using their weapon if they need to, but also the de-escalation. And one thing that I'll add is, I'm grateful for Canyon School District for their support on this effort, and mostly because since you do have those guardians that are going to be in schools, and I think we probably have a lot of different opinions on if that was a wise idea of the state to even do that in the first place. But since the state passed that law saying that you have to have an individual in schools with a gun, I sure hope that where my kids are going to school and kids of our community, that those people actually receive legitimate training, proper training. Again, I don't know, the police department can speak to this, but I'm sure there's a lot of people that have accidents with guns that aren't trained. And I do not want the person in the school who is tasked with that duty, who's not a police officer necessarily, to make those mistakes. So I know that we're going to go around the table, but I know that we're not voting on this today. I think this is a motion to let them continue to work on this and then engage with the neighbors and others to talk about some of their concerns.
Well, and thank you. So I was able to go to Milo and I was able to go with our chief and assistant chief, and I agree that there's a need for training. I've had several people share that with me, and we definitely want our officers to be trained and have more facilities. My concerns are with the siting of where this is, because when this was applied for, the plan was for it to be near the public works, which is not so close to residential areas and not so close to our city hall. So I was able to bring my husband with me. He is a retired Air Force physician who worked in occupational environmental medicine. And he had recommendations that I should have gotten this in the packet, and I'll try to add it to the packet for the record. But his recommendations that it should be 70 feet from residential property for noise nuisance and 400 feet for lead, because there will be the need to take out the filter. Someone in a hazmat suit should be there to take it out, and there's a possibility of lead while that is happening to be in the environment. And so in addition, it's the noise in our county. Because we don't have a city ordinance for noise that I'm aware of, we fall to the county, and the county requires 50 for the typical single family residence. It's nighttime 50 decibels. And it's in daytime 60 decibels. So given that we're putting up a gate and things, I think it would be a great thing to have a study done of what those would mean for the community with the noise. Now, I know I had heard that our police department was looking at having it sited elsewhere in the county. Is that true, that we could look at partnering with another municipality, that was an active investigation to look if we could do that?
No, ma'am, we sold this, we presented it as a Cottonwood Heights asset that we would share regionally. It is something that will add great value to our city. So we had no intention, no desire to seek placement in any other city.
So I had heard actively from our city manager, who's not here, that because we were not able to find, we were considering school site that is being closed. We were considering, looking around to find and not finding a lot of options, so that I was told that we were looking outside of our city to partner with someone. I have seen nothing in writing requiring us to stay within the city, that we could potentially partner outside of the city to find an optional site that doesn't impact a residential neighborhood so closely. Is that not true?
Not to my knowledge. I know that was suggested before, but the police department would oppose that because that we would lose control of the asset. And this is a very valuable asset to us and to the city itself. And when we presented this, we sold it as a Cottonwood Heights asset, opening it up regionally to other agencies. I think it would be a terrible idea to give this away to any other municipality. I don't know that I agree that there's as many risks with putting it here. When we originally built this building, there was supposed to be a range here. They just ran out of money. The public works area was a secondary site.
But for the application, it was the primary site. That's what I've been told. And I was told by our city manager that there was active look at having it outside of our city to partner with someone.
Does anybody else remember that? I don't.
Yeah, that spoke with me about
Okay.
it.
We should check with him because I don't believe that's his.
Okay. And I just wonder about the impact to property values. I don't know if this is, again, we have a list in the packet of other places that have ranges. Do you know if any of them are this close to a neighborhood?
I would have to look at the full list. I have not reached out to everybody.
Yeah.
They do place these in homes. So these ranges are in
Facilities?
people's
Yes,
homes.
I understand.
And
Right.
I believe our code would allow it if somebody requested a variance, they could place one in their home.
Right, that would be their active choice as a landowner and as a property owner. I just think for the residences around here that these are things I would like to know. I would like to know if these that are in the packet, where they are located in coordination with a residential neighborhood, if they're this close.
Yes, ma'am.
And I would like to know if it's impacted property values. I would like to know, I would like to have a study looking at the decibel range. If we're below 60 during the day for those homes that are less than, that are 140 feet away. Because I do care about our officers. I care about our community and want this not to be a negative impact on this area where it was not planned to be when we applied for it, as far as everything I've been told.
Yeah, just to be clear, when you do apply, you don't actually give a specific location. It is just something that the city is committing to, that you will find a specific location, because if it was part of that application, we would be obligated to physically put it there without any variance. So there isn't an approval process on where to locate it as part of that application process. And as far as where it goes, I do know that, so how this funding works, it's a little different than a traditional grant program. So like in the actual budget that Congress passes, it specifically says Cottonwood Heights City for this specific purpose. So it's a direct statutory guidance on this item, which means, from my understanding, that you can't transfer necessary ownership of it. How that would work and the dynamics if you did, put it on the school property where they own the property and they're leasing it to you. I think some of those things maybe could happen, but it would definitely have to stay in the ownership and frankly, probably within the city somewhere, but.
Can you speak to that for a second? I hear a lot about, the residences and the risks. Murray's is right by a big apartment complex. Murray's is behind the Intermountain Medical Center, right behind it. Levi's is in the police department in the middle of a residential area.
Across the street from neighborhood.
But in
Is this a converted
buildings,
school?
like,
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a converted school.
And they put it in their garage. They just kind of retrofitted a small area as a range. So it sits right inside, it's right next door to.
Yeah, so
the
you've
house.
got their city hall area, then you have that police department area that's right there in the middle of their neighborhood.
And it's not this range. It's not, doesn't have the safety mechanisms that this range does. Now, yes, we did look at schools. It didn't, Milo agreed that it didn't meet our needs. Here's why. The parking was an issue, the access for the classrooms and restrooms was in question. There would certainly be a negative aspect of people thinking that the city was complicit in any closing of schools to try to place their range there, which is not the case. And really, we can't secure it, we can't monitor it. For those reasons, it needed to be here at City Hall.
Okay, just a quick question. During the presentation, you said there'd be an independent group that would be responsible for the removal of the lead. They have some specialty training in that and then accept the liability for that?
Yeah, so Murray uses Action Target, which is a Utah County based company, and they build that's where the number, the 4.7, whatever that number was, came from, because they build ranges, and they're great, and they do a great job. They come out and they get the lead, and then there's a value to it, so they give Murray a credit towards paper targets and things that they use. Now, Murray's recovery system is very different than ours. Ours is very simple. It goes into what essentially looks like Home Depot 5-gallon paint buckets. It gets funneled right in there, and you open it up and they put a seal on it, tap down, they carry it out. That's what it is. It's not complicated. It's very safe, and they recover the lead and they give you, they give you a credit.
So that's done within the range itself?
Yes,
Yeah, it's on the outside.
under negative pressure, so it
Oh.
Yeah.
seals the area.
Yeah.
It stays within the HEPA filter area. The HEPA filters can be changed out from inside. And when they're changed out, they just get placed into bags inside the negative filter area. And then the same company that picks up the lead also picks up and disposes of the HEPA filters so that they're under control and disposed of properly. We have to sign a contract so that in the past, people have, instead of paying a proper company to get rid of them, they would just throw them in the trash. And now you have this lead contamination, just throw them in the trash, or so it's part of the contract that to get rid of the lead, we're also getting rid of the HEPA filters that are contaminated with lead. But they're all stored in the negative pressure area.
Just to be clear, I was impressed with the facility that creates the company has been around 30 years, that the facilities that they are building are, I believe, great, high quality, and I think it would add value to the type of training that our officers could do here in the valley. So I don't have a problem with the facility itself. My concern is the siting of where it is. So if these questions can be answered for me, if we can do a test, a certified test to show what the noise would be for those residents, if it would be below 60 during the day. That's important to get that answer, and where are these other facilities located in comparison? Is it bringing residential single family home values down or not? You know, these are things that would help our residents to have some questions answered to.
Mayor, just for your information, I did message the city manager, who's unfortunately out of town. He said that they were looking at Bella Vista, property in Bella Vista, and that City Hall is the best for a number of reasons.
Okay, and
So
just to
not
be
up for
clear,
review.
I'm not making it up. I have been told that they were looking outside of our city.
So yeah, Mayor, maybe this helps clear some of that up. I do know that we did have some cities who did try for a similar appropriation and were not successful. And I do know that we have had some cities that, said, hey, we'd love to have it, which maybe was part of the discussion of what you heard, not saying I wasn't part of those conversations, but I do know that others obviously are a little envious of it.
May I make a statement? And I appreciate all the information. We had an additional meeting a few days ago with the chief and other staff. And we, for the public's knowledge, this is our second time to discuss the shooting range. Our first discussion was approximately 6 weeks ago, as I remember. And at that time, I asked to see more of the documents. What I've been able to see, what's been provided to me, is that it was back in, I believe, 2023. And I know that Councilmember Holton was involved in advancing this grant request with feds at a federal level. And we appreciate that our Councilmember Holton served in capacity in Washington, D.C., with Senator Mike Lee as his deputy chief of staff. And therefore, he has a lot of contacts in Washington, D.C., to his credit. The document that I have been privy to calls, when it was initially requested, and this grant was put off the ground in 2023, it was for a shooting range. There was no mention in the original request for any monies that it would include de-escalation training. Now, a couple years later, it has been framed that this will emphasize de-escalation. Believe me, no one wants de-escalation more than me. And I'm not trying to top the stories that Sean Newell has told because it's heart-wrenching to know what you've gone through. I have also gone through a tragedy, except it didn't end with threatening of guns. I lost my father to gun violence. So I too this is a very hot topic for me, and I care very deeply about it. And so the point that I think I would like to make, there's a few of them. One of them is that this is called the Wasatch Front Regional Public Safety Firearms Training Facility. Now, because it's for the Wasatch Front, I've not seen any language, though it was awarded, and we can give credit to our chief and to our council member Holton for the success that we've had that other cities are envious of. But my main duty on this city council is to look out for the public well-being of the people that live in Cottonwood Heights. And I cannot see why we would take on this project after the statements I've already made earlier in this meeting. We are, in my opinion, we would be better off to look for a location that is more distance from residents by doing this in an interlocal agreement with another city, one of those cities that's envious, that, you know, wants to partner and advance this. It would decrease our liabilities, decrease our risk. There'd be many positives, in my opinion, to looking into placing this outside the city. I still have some additional questions. I'm interested in the schedule for periodic major refurbishments. I understand that Murray just spent $1 million. I would like to know when we would anticipate major refurbishments, at what cost? Because while it's being proposed that this will be a net positive revenue stream, it would be a lot of money if we were facing $1 million refurbishment for the future people in this city. I also want to know, have power and electric costs been included in this? I'd like to see more a study about it being based on frangibles instead of lead. I also have the question, even if we went to frangible ammunition, there's still fumes from the ignition of a weapon. How is that dealt with? And I also support having a decibel study. Thank you.
I just want to add one thing. I'm looking at a letter right now from March 26, 2024. Valley Police Alliance to Representative John Curtis at the time. And at the very end, it lists the top priorities, and de-escalation was a priority from day one. It's
No,
always been.
this is a letter from 2026. You just
No,
said.
it's 2024. March 26, 2024.
So the scenarios, I agree, the scenarios that they're available, they could lead to a lot of good training. I think that's commendable.
And when I was tasked with building the range, it was not just a range. We were trying to make something that was more of a training facility, not just for live fire firearms, but something that could bring the officers up to speed, and we can adjust those. As you were able to see there, they can make scenarios for issues that are live, like things that are happening right now. We can actually make a new scenario or have a scenario made for us and sent to us at any time. We can actually film a scenario in our school to be used there. I just think my worry about even looking at an offsite location is we would lose control. We wouldn't have access to the facility anymore. We'd be back to paying for use of a facility that we worked to get.
No, I said interlocal agreement. I didn't say that we would lose complete control. I never advocated for that. And I am in favor of de-escalation training. I don't think this should be a matter of any kind of posturing or ego. This needs to be really thought out and analyzed. What's the best thing for the people who live in Cottonwood Heights? And so, you know, I just want to be clear that that's where I'm coming from.
One other thing to add is you do have the options of live or simulated. So in many instances, you will do simulated situations. So it does give you that option and flexibility as well.
Which helps save money on ammo and not having to run the HEPA filters and all that type of stuff while you're in. I think this checks a lot of boxes, gives us something that we don't currently have. We don't currently have access to. We can sometimes get access to a range, we can sometimes get access to a simulator. This gives us the ability to do it at all times. If we're having an issue with an officer, we're able to bring that officer in immediately and get them some training. As you know, losing an officer to training SCAR or something like that, or it's very expensive, and we're having trouble recruiting, retaining. I think this is a plus. It gives us something that we just don't have right now.
Address the refurbishment, which if we are, say, facing $1 million refurbishment, which you said is you just call Milo and they pick it up and they pay us for it and they take it away, and so a future council can decide if that's an issue or not. I think this could be a shining example for proper training of police guardians, but with safety as our highest priority. And I just have to point this out. I am deeply disappointed that this council would ignore 85 decibels for pickleball. But we're talking about maybe, 60 decibels, which is a conversation about something that's so important. And so I appreciate also that in the presentation that CHPD is going to reach out to the citizens, and we have this time of due diligence between now and the time when the council will vote. And I would expect that outreach is going to happen with the neighbors so that if there's any other concerns, that those could be addressed. I find it comforting that this particular company has been around for 30 years. I bet they've probably faced some of these things and they have been able to answer those questions. I think it's also interesting that this particular range is in the middle of a Cabela's, where people are coming and going all the time. And so at least we still need to ask the questions, but it gives me some comfort to know that these things have been addressed. And if there is any significant safety concerns, then the council should vote no when there's a final vote. But I would feel comfortable moving forward through the process so that we can answer all of the questions and have this as an asset, not just to our community, but for all of the communities along the Wasatch Front to have this very valuable training opportunity.
And Councilmember Highland and Mayor, as you've talked about some of those decibels, and that is funny. You made me
I'm a
chuckle.
little irritated by
You
that.
made me chuckle.
Okay, pickleball at 85 decibels, we can.
So, but I do think it'd be helpful information as you look at some landscaping and that 6-foot wall to understand the impacts that it would have to some noise as well. 8-foot wall, thank you. But I think it's helpful to know what that data looks like. So.
Yeah, that would be great to have that answered.
Anything else before we move to our next topic?
Well, I'm looking for the direction. Do we need to continue to develop that site and
Yeah.
contact the neighbors? Is that the consensus that I hear?
Right.
Yes,
Probably
Thank-
3 of the members.
thank you for your time.
Okay, now we'll move on to a flash vote discussion with Council Member Suzanne Highland will lead us that.
Wow. Nearly as important or critical as what we've just discussed, so appreciate that, and I'll be brief. When we contracted with Flash Vote, one of their assurances is that they would help us develop a member panel that is representative of our community. And at the risk of repeating, but just for those who maybe aren't as familiar with statistics and statistical methods, what you really aim for when you're doing sampling is to have a sample that represents the population. So this is the best graphic I could find, and you see that if you had a sample that was all red, that wouldn't represent the population, or if you had a sample size that was all yellow or predominantly yellow, it wouldn't represent the population. And the gold standard for sampling for statistical surveys is a random sample. But what Y2K analytics, for example, and why it's so expensive to use Y2K analytics is that they do a random sample and have to keep calling and keep reaching out to people until they have enough people in that survey to be representative of the population. and it takes a lot of time. And so Flashvote brought us this alternate opportunity where if we develop a member panel that's representative of population, we can still account for that with a calculation of the margin of error. And their margin of error is a little bit higher than I'm comfortable with, but I'll get to that in just a minute. But that is why their margin of error is higher than you typically see in surveys, which is usually plus or minus 4%. And it's because we're substituting a member panel for a random sample. So I had the opportunity to have a conversation with Flashvote, and the reason I took on that is because I've been trained in econometrics, and so I felt like I am qualified because of my background to be able to ask some really difficult questions. And what we want really as a council, the reason we decided to fund this is we want trusted survey results. And they assured us we could get that with this with this member panel instead of a randomized sample. And the trade-off is that we can do these really quick surveys. So we don't have to take weeks and weeks and weeks of random sampling. But sometimes that means we're trading off a little bit of accuracy for that timeliness of doing these surveys. So this is what we have right now in our member panel. And we've done a lot of outreach. I want to credit some of the council members who have done some outreach, but we've also done some outreach in our community newsletter and otherwise. And so right now, this is Cottonwood Heights' current member panel. So you can see male and female, we're really good, half and half. And then even with the age panel, Flashvote said it's not uncommon for those to 30 and under to not respond so much. And so they would like to curate this a little bit more. But if you think about the population in Cottonwood Heights, we are predominantly an older community. And so even this age distribution we can be fairly confident in. And where we have a little bit of discrepancy is because we have 4 districts, you would want to see people in the districts a more even distribution. So like a 25%, 25%, 25%, 25%. And the reason that what's that? Two of them are very, yes, you see District 2 and District 3 are right there. And so the disparity right now is District 1 and District 4. So I initially went to Flashvote thinking, oh, you can do better with this member panel, or couldn't you randomly select from our random panel so that you don't survey everybody? You're actually trying to even out the differences between District 4 and District 1. And I should have thought about this, but being statisticians, they want all the raw data that they can get. So they don't want to exclude any data. So their answer, instead of trying to randomize the member panel, was to think about the results. And their solution, because we are not the first ones, the first city or municipality to face this, is to weight the survey data to balance the representation across the districts. And I don't know how they do their math magic. I don't have the time to understand it, so I'm going to trust that they do know how to do that. And their reasoning is that this would ensure equal influence from the districts regardless of the population size. And they are coming out with a beta dashboard, a beta version of the dashboard that would enable us to look at these results somewhat differently. The other thing that I asked them about is, you've heard me say in many budget discussions, whenever I see a percentage, I always want to say a percentage of what, what are we really looking at and what do these results mean? And so they had talked about helping us as council members be better equipped to be able to interpret survey data. And what that would look like right now, this is Flashvote's recommendation to us, is that they would grant us early access to this beta version of the dashboard. It's not quite ready yet, but it will be soon. And this is why I was somewhat opposed to doing any additional surveys until we could address this bias in our member panel. And then I even pitched to him, would you consider at times joining us virtually in a council meeting to explain the survey data and how they've approached that weighting, so that we all have confidence that there's not a bias in either the way we gather data or the way that we're reporting data. Let me switch my screen. I want to just go over to, this is a survey result. This is Cottonwood Heights. this was our first survey, so we didn't really have very many, people in our survey quite yet. I think in our pools right now. But if you remember from the initial training we did, when you filter the results, you can filter by all kinds of different locals, whether they're owner, non-owner, by gender, by districts, and it's the member panel that is the representation of our community, the best representation, although these other data points are really important. So right now I'm on member panel, and I just have to show you this. So here we have green, which means these are the people who responded, who probably got the survey sent to them through, like, I got a text for the survey if I sent it to somebody else. And so here you see in this bar graph, these various numbers. And one of the things to really pay attention to is we've got a plus or minus 6% margin of error. That's a lot of variability. And so as we increase our member panel size, that margin of error, we want that to go down. In fact, I'm somewhat uncomfortable with this plus or minus 6%. And if Flash Vote can't deliver more for us, I would question whether we want to continue the contract we have with them. I think we decided 2 years. But I want to show you something that's really important. If you go to table view, think about what that green bar was telling us. That green bar is only representative of 10 people. The blue bar was 273. But if I go back to, see how misleading results can be unless you really know what you're looking at and what it represents. So you could look at that other, and if you don't know what that means, there could be a lot of misinterpretation, plus the fact that it's only 10 people. Whereas the blue bar represents 273. So as a trained statistician, that is why I always say a percentage of what. So I'm encouraged that Flash Vote is willing to help us dial this in a little bit better. If we do another survey, when we do another survey, I want them to come to the council meeting virtually and talk to us about how they have addressed bias and what results we should focus on. I think one of the fun things to look at, and I don't have the access to the property tax one, but if you go through and look at the responses, just the free responses, it's really insightful and almost some of them comical, just to see what people put in these comment section. So I just wanted to bring this back to you and tell you that this is not unique to our city, where we have some potential bias in the data. I need to feel comfortable that we can trust the data and that it's being used and reported in a way that's fair and representative. Any questions?
I'll set. Richard, thank you for this.
Yeah, I do think we should hold their feet to the fire. That this is what they promised us, that it's not a randomized survey, a sample, then we need to be able to trust the results of the surveys that we do through them.
Any comments before we move on? Okay, I will move on then with our review of calendars and upcoming events. We have our Charm Hedge Recycle event on Saturday, this coming Saturday, June 6th, from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. at Hillside Plaza. We have FBI Cyber Awareness presentation on Tuesday, June 9th, 5:30 to 7:30 at the City Hall in the community room. Was our police, did you facilitate this or how did you? Oh, good.
Yeah.
Thank you,
I
Councilmember.
did. So
Thank
I work with the FBI on a regular
Thank you.
basis, and there's a lot of emphasis here for our youth
Yes.
and for our aging population on things to be concerned about with cybersecurity.
Yes, thank you so
I
much.
didn't realize I was thinking older adults, but youth.
The youth
We
is-
should encourage everyone to come to
Kenyon's
this.
district is putting it out on their website as well.
Okay,
So we'll have law enforcement here. Hopefully Chief will get the many officers there.
great.
Our aging population and our young people. Kenyon's is doing a good job of it.
All
They're
of it.
gonna do it a second
I
time.
mean,
Yeah,
and put it out.
all of
Yeah.
it.
congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. We have Butlerville Days, July 16th to July 13th, the Monster Mash Trunk or Treat, October 22nd at Hillside Plaza. And that is the end of our upcoming events. And with that, I'll take a motion for the next item that we have.
I'll make a motion to close the work session and open the closed meeting based on the personnel discussion.
Second.
Thank you. This is for the public to know. I was sent an evaluation for our city manager. One of the major responsibilities that we have as a city council is the hiring and work with our city manager, because our city manager, as in our city manager form of government, runs our city for us. And so this will be great to have. We're going to have feedback from each of our department heads and discussion as a council. So with that, I'll take a vote on this motion that's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.